come up in scenarios, and the learners get to know them over the course of their short courses, and they have this presence. They're there for learners also to emotionally connect to, and that relatability, we hope, also supports retention. So the second part of this storytelling pedagogies is that we use these characters to tell stories. We use the characters to represent potential challenges that the learners themselves might face. And we also use them when for example, we're presenting an activity. It might be a forum activity where we ask the learners to go and do something and then write something in the forum. If we're going to do that, then we can use a worked example from one of our characters. Such and such a character did this in response to the activity. Here's their example. And then the learners can critique that. They can engage with that before they do their own, hopefully building up a little bit of confidence. And finally, modelling reflective practice using the character's own reflections. So we're really keen, especially because these courses are self-paced and they are totally asynchronous. So we're really keen to get these students to reflect on their work. There aren't that many opportunities for them to get a lot of feedback. We build them in where we can, but if they can reflect on their own work, then that's another way that when we scaffold that very carefully, then that's another way for them to gain a lot of benefit from that mode of learning. So we give them, for example, characters' own reflections. We give them characters' learning goals based on their career aspirations, based on what the character wants to achieve. Then we can write a reflection from that perspective, and the learner can look at that and take that as a model and take that as inspiration. So the process of designing the characters, really there are sort of two phases here. The first on the left is starting from a set of learner personas, which we had that were generated for us by academics from across partner institutions, from our partner institutions across Africa, across these 4 countries that we're working in. They wrote for us in a session in summer 24, this set of learner personas based on their knowledge of their students they taught. And I took those and I said, I want to be able to represent the kinds of people that you are talking about here. I want to be able to represent these in characters. So these number 2 and 3 really happened in parallel. Firstly, very important to assemble a design team that had lived experience that would be across some of these countries and would be able to ground these characters in the reality of Nigeria, for example, or in Kenya. And alongside that, I wanted a set of questions that we would answer in this group that would help us to flesh out who these characters were. Of course, we want to know the name, we want to know where they're from. We also need to know learning needs. We need to know, what does an average week look like? What are their caring responsibilities, perhaps? Are they working? Are they volunteering? What does that feel like? But beyond that, we want to go a bit deeper, and we want to get windows into their personalities. So I devised a set of scenario-based questions. What would they do, or how would they feel if such and such? For example, what would they do if they were in a room full of people they don't know? Or what would they do if they were asked to give a presentation such as this? What would they do if they had to go on a long journey? And these gave us really interesting windows into characters' behaviours and values. As we moved into 4 here, answering the questions, we went back and forth a lot on what's this particular character's need, or what's their family circumstance, and then what can we take from how they behave in a particular situation, and a very iterative. It was a very iterative and very creative process of designing these characters. We obviously had to go through fact-checking after that to make sure that, for example, names made sense. Does it make sense that such and such a person grows up in this setting and then moves to this setting? Lots of questions to rigorously check there. And finally, ensuring diversity is about looking across the set, developed 4 characters, and making sure that everything that we wanted to be represented was there. Diversity such as, obviously, gender, age, but also we wanted to make sure we had a diversity of rural and urban, of their interests, religious practices and beliefs, of their some of their different challenges perhaps that they faced based on their personality. So very keen. We looked across the full set characters and thought about how we were going to iterate further and modify them further to ensure we were incorporating these elements of diversity that we wanted to represent across the set. And I'm very happy to introduce you to these AI-generated photorealistic images that our visual designer created of our 4 characters. We have Abena, who is from Ghana, wants to be a pediatrician, grew up in a rural village and moved after high school to a city. John, who's 22, he grew up in and still lives in a rural setting. He went to university in Nairobi and then moved back. He has a lot of caring responsibilities for his family. He wants to be a science teacher. Taboho, he is very sociable, he's very outgoing. He wants to be a data analyst, and he's currently balancing studies in data analytics with his part-time work as a taxi marshal on a taxi rank. Fatima, finally, from Nigeria, wants to be a journalist. Is a little bit less confident, but very keen on empowering women and hearing women's voices. And she was displaced due to conflict in northern Nigeria. So we've got a range of different things going on with these characters that we can bring into the courses, put them in dialogue with one another sometimes as well. And Indusa, if we can hear you, is now going to take us through some examples of how we've used these courses. Indusa, are you there?
I can hear clearly now. Sorry, there was a mistake. I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. So maybe just a quick introduction. I'm Indusa Abwavo. I'm a learning designer from Nairobi, working at the African Leadership Center. We've been working very closely with Michael on developing these short courses. And to show you an example of how we use these learner characters in the short courses. So there's 2 strands. So one, we use them in scenarios within the courses, and then also in modeling and encouraging reflective practice. So in terms of using them in scenarios, we have used these characters to demonstrate application of tools or processes. We have also used the characters to illustrate a challenge. We have used them to make problems seem relatable, because our focus was in making these courses really grounded in reality. And we've also used them in quizzes, basically formative assessment, which is the first example here. And then, so basically in scenarios, I think also our main focus was not just trying to show these characters that these challenges and problems are relatable, but it was also really about helping learners to think deeper about problems and to really focus on application of some of these concepts and tools that they learned. And so we used, for example, like here Teboho, using him to show, basically used him to show learners how to solve a problem. And then in the end, they would think of how they would relate that problem to their own reality. The second example is modeling and encouraging reflective practice. And so here what we did is pick a character and sort of show learners that this character is helping you along this learning journey, sort of like your companion, and here are their learning goals. So giving them an example of what the character was looking to learn at the end of that course, and then asking learners to share in their wikis or in a forum what they wanted to learn at the end of the course, so what they were expecting to gain at the end of the course, or the skills they were hoping to develop. So when we piloted these short courses, we piloted from last September for the first problem solving course, piloted last September and ran through to January this year. And when we were collecting feedback, we had a feedback form at the end of the short course, and we wanted to learn from learners, basically, what character did you find most relatable? And why did you choose this character as the one that you feel like is most relatable? We had 64 learners for this first short course. We had 15 who completed the feedback forms, and so we'll go ahead and look at some of the responses that we got from them. But I think when you are collecting this feedback, there are some key themes that came out. Michael, if you go to the next slide, please. So some of these key themes, we have arranged them, we have numbered them according to how strongly they came out in the feedback. So portraying relatable experiences and goals is one of the key themes that learners really said they found the characters are useful for them. So they found that the characters were relatable. They found the characters, some of the challenges that the characters were going through, they have gone through the same challenges. When we were designing these characters, we really, like Michael has said, we really focused on, understanding their weaknesses, their strengths, how would they react in certain situations. And so most of the learners found that they could really relate to some of these experiences. Another key theme that came out was that the learners found that the characters made that learning experience quite engaging. Storytelling is quite important in Africa and used a lot in the development of courses. And so these stories that we told through the scenarios in the courses helped to make that learning experience engaging for the learners. Learners also appreciated that the characters, are from their countries. We've mentioned that we are creating these courses for learners in Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, and Nigeria. And so just seeing that these learners are from their country made the learners appreciate them. And lastly, when it comes to emotional engagement, these learners said that these characters helped to make that learning experience immersive, like they felt really embedded in the course and going along the same journey with these learner characters. And to just dive a bit deeper into one example of feedback we received from a learner who found Fatima, who's from Nigeria. If you remember, Michael has shown the learner characters, and Fatima from Nigeria has gone through some trouble in northern Nigeria because of the war, and so she had to move from her home. But despite these experiences, she's really learning a lot from these experiences and wanting to still help others. And just like this character, the learner said, they have faced situations where they wanted to make a difference, but had to learn from initial setbacks. So just like Fatma, they want to use these experiences to become better and to help their society. And then also, Fatima's journey motivated them to use their own skills intentionally to solve problems and create impact as well. We also had the opportunity to actually speak to some learners, and this is what one of them had to say. So one of the learners actually said that when they have a problem to solve, they just remember how the characters solved the problem and how they use the methodologies and processes. This just points back to the importance of using scenarios within the content and storytelling, because it sort of mixes up with the other points of making that learning experience engaging and helping learners to immerse in it. So there's a mix of making the learning engaging and also having that a level of emotional connection for the learners.
Thank you so much, Indusa. So now we'll finish off with a couple of key takeaways. Firstly, as Indusa said, I think we're really happy to see how much the learners enjoyed relating to the characters and how they made the course more memorable and relatable and motivating. Thank you. So we think that worked. But also, we learned a lot from the process of developing the characters. We learned, I think, to focus on the set as a whole and think about how to compare their differences, similarities. And we've really taken that forward now because we are developing a set of 4 characters for another program as well. You saw on one of the early slides there, the Foundation Certificate for Applied Health. So we're developing a set of 4 characters for that as well. And I've sort of modified our approach for that. I've started us off with the personalities and the learning needs, which I kind of think of as the back end of the character design, as opposed to the user-facing front end, the name and where they come from and whatnot. And in doing so, I think that's enabled us to really focus in on, to make the process a bit more efficient, to focus in on what we want to be able to do with the characters as we start using them, and their needs. And That's allowed us to focus on that diversity before we even come to, is this character male? What country, female? What country is this character coming from? So that's something that we've sort of switched around and has worked quite nicely as we've been creating our second set of learner characters. Indusa.
We also found that designed these learner characters for the design team. We really came to appreciate focused on the learner as we created. So it made the process of designing these courses quite learner-centric. Whether it was coming up with the scenarios, whether it was designing the assessments, we always had to think of the learner. The learner was at the center of the design. And so these characters really helped us to focus on the learner's needs, especially because it was really important for this project to understand the demographics of the learner and to really focus on what do they need to get out of this course? Is it valuable for them? So we really focused on what the needs of the learners were. And then another thing we really appreciated was that AI can be very helpful in writing scenarios. It really helped to speed up the process. We would feed some information about the character to either Copilot or ChatGPT and it would help us come up with scenarios or even in generation of some of the assessments. So it really helped to speed up the process for us.